The young master of the wealthy family once forced an airplane to stop for me, and I once disappeared for 3 years while pregnant. We got married. 9 years later, a younger and more beautiful girl appeared by the young master's side. She was lively and bold, and she also accompanied him to do all kinds of adventurous things. As for me, I had become a housewife, only able to stare at my daughter and forbid her from eating junk food. The young master said disappointedly, "Sherry, you've lost your vitality." My daughter also disliked me. Aunt Tracy is smart, beautiful and can earn money. What about you? You can only rely on my dad. The next day, I took my ID card and got a divorce from the young master. They might have forgotten. At the age of 22, I was brave enough to jump from a cliff into the deep sea in order to leave. At the age of 35, I still don't lack the courage to start all over again. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. He City is adjacent to the capital city. It used to be a heavy industrial city, but now it has declined. In a computer company in He City, I pushed open the glass door. The girl at the front desk was browsing Douyin, and the sound was turned on. The young master Anthony is divorced. This couple is simply like a novel template. The ex-wife is a graduate of Peking University. Due to the opposition from the family, there was a heart-wrenching love story of him chasing and her running away, and she couldn't escape even with wings. It is rumored that the U-8420 flight grounding incident that caused a great stir back then was because the young master stopped the flight route in order to pursue his wife. Who would have thought that they would get divorced now? Indeed, marriages across social classes are very difficult. The girl at the front desk was focused on watching with her head down and didn't notice my arrival. So, I accompanied her and listened to the whole 3-minute video. It was like looking back on the first half of my life. The girl finally saw me and nervously turned off the sound. "Oh, I'm sorry. Are you here for an interview?" "Yes. I made an appointment with the general manager at 10 o'clock for an interview as an algorithm engineer." The girl suddenly understood. "Oh, okay. Please fill out this information form." Associating with the video just now, the girl's eyes lit up. The general manager said that you are also a graduate of Peking University. Have you ever met Anthony's wife? Anthony's wife seems to be called. I had been married to Anthony for so long that I had lost my own name. I smiled and told her, "Sherry." Yes, Sherry. The girl looked dreamy. To be able to win over the young master, she must be an intellectual and beautiful woman. A beautiful woman. I twitched the corners of my mouth, but my daughter had just disliked the fat on my waist last week, saying that I didn't have the slender figure of an 18-year-old girl. "Ma'am, have you filled out the form? I'll take it to the interviewer." I handed the form to her. The girl at the front desk said, "Okay, this way, please. Ms. Sherry." She raised her head suddenly as if she had seen a ghost. The interview went smoothly. The general manager in charge of technology looked at my resume. The top science student in the province, the first in the computer science department of Peking University, and the first author of 3 top conference journals. "Ms. Sherry, your resume is very impressive. However, I'm quite puzzled. Why haven't you worked since you graduated from university?" My fingers clenched tightly on my pants, and I said in a low voice, "To take care of my child. I got accidentally pregnant at the age of 22. Anthony's mother was extremely dissatisfied with me. In Anthony's life plan, he should marry a daughter from a family of equal status, instead of me, a Cinderella from a poor background. Even to force me to leave, his mother used extremely drastic means." The wealthy lady with red lips looked at me indifferently, and there was a row of bodyguards standing behind her. The sky was as black as ink. The sea water was bone-chillingly cold. I jumped off the high cliff. At that time, everyone thought I was dead, perhaps because of the injury from the cliff jumping. My daughter was extremely weak when she was born. She had high needs, an allergic constitution, and refused to drink milk powder. Her little face was swollen and turned blue-purple, and she cried all night long. There was only me, a weak woman after childbirth, bustling around to take care of the newborn. The general manager understood. "Ms. Sherry, you have been out of the workforce for too long. You can only start as a grassroots employee. Is that okay?" I nodded without hesitation. "Okay." The general manager stood up and shook my hand. "Then welcome to join us." I shook his hand in return, and my heart suddenly started beating. It was beating as violently as when I learned that I had been admitted to Peking University. It was like taking the second step in my life. The next day, I walked into the company, and the general manager looked at me with an apologetic expression. Sorry, your offer has been cancelled. I was stunned. Why? He swallowed and carefully pointed in a direction. Our company has just been acquired, and the new president said that you can't be hired. I looked in the direction he pointed. The sunlight shone through the blinds, casting a golden edge on the man sitting in the leather boss chair. He was tall, wearing a high-end custom-made suit. Under the smoky gray trousers, his ankles were wrapped in black socks. The leather chair slowly turned around. He had a straight nose, thin lips, a superior brow bone, and deep facial features. The only accessory on him was the watch on his wrist bone, which cost 8 figures. His noble aura was self-evident. The man suppressed his anger and said in a deep voice, "Sherry, have you had enough of this? Our daughter is waiting for you to go back." His gaze swept over the yellowed walls of the company and the old water dispenser, and a mocking smile appeared in his eyes. "Can you earn $6,000 a month here? I'm very busy and don't have time to play these tricks with you." I raised my eyes and looked at this man who I had been entangled with from the age of 20 to my 30s, and suddenly felt it was ridiculous. I heard myself say softly, "What should I go back for?" "To take care of your mistress during her confinement." "Anthony, I'm not that cheap." Anthony pressed his forehead. "I've told you many times. I was drunk that night and don't remember anything." The sound of high heels tapping on the ground came. The door opened a crack, and a pair of feet wearing nude high heels stepped in. Tracy was wearing a professional suit. Under the smoky gray short skirt were a pair of snow-white long legs. Her long curly hair was draped over her shoulders, and her belly was slightly protruding, but her figure was still graceful. She placed the documents in her hand on Anthony's desk and said softly, "Mr. Anthony, this is the acquisition contract of this company. Please take a look." It was like a sledgehammer hitting my body hard. I took a deep breath, held back the sourness at the corners of my eyes, and looked at him coldly. "You really have some creativity. You come to find your ex-wife and bring your pregnant mistress with you." Anthony frowned and said impatiently, "Tracy is different from you. She is the chief special assistant. If I don't bring her for the merger and acquisition case, who else can I bring?" "Forgot. You've never worked, so you don't understand these things." Each word was like a knife stabbing at my heart. My heart was like being covered with a damp cloth, and my chest ached with stuffiness. At the age of 18, I was a provincial top student with a promising future. The bright red banner with my name fluttered at the school gate, and everyone knew my name. The smiling faces of the villagers were full of vitality and simplicity. The young family's daughter will surely become a pillar of the country in the future. At the age of 22, I was the president of the student union. I represented the school and went to Vienna to attend the ICML academic conference. In the lecture hall with tens of thousands of people, I spoke fluent English and was confident and generous. When I walked on the campus path, someone would point at me and say, "Look, that's Senior Sherry. She's super amazing." At the age of 35, how did I end up like this? Tracy raised her head. Her young and beautiful face looked at me, and her voice was gentle. "Sister Sherry, don't blame Mr. Anthony." It was the company's annual meeting that day. Mr. Anthony and I were both drunk. I originally planned to have an abortion, but the old lady accidentally found out and took me for a checkup. It turned out to be a boy, so I decided to keep it. She stroked her belly and showed a smile. "You know, the old lady has always wanted Mr. Anthony to have another son. You haven't been able to give birth to a son all these years. It's Mr. Anthony who has been bearing the pressure from the old lady for you." A huge and extremely absurd feeling hit me. I covered my throat, as if the pain of seawater filling my mouth and nose still remained on me. Under the extreme absurdity, I laughed out of anger. Why didn't I give birth to a son? That old woman knows better than anyone else. I've said that my Crystal is my only daughter, and I will only have her as my daughter. Whatever. Anthony stood up. At 188 meters tall, he was a head taller than me. Standing in front of me, his shadow completely enveloped me. Anthony's face was as gloomy as the continuous rain outside the window. "When you were 20, this was called being a bit playful and charming. But at the age of 30, it's no longer cute. It's stupid." He said word by word, "Sherry, think it through yourself." After that, I applied to 7 or 8 more companies. Without exception, Anthony ruined all of them. The direction of my major is in line with technology companies, and Anthony's family has great influence in the technology field. He even spread the word that if any company dares to hire me, They won't be invited to the next year's technology summit. Once this statement was made, the companies avoided me even more. Even as soon as the name, Sherry, was mentioned, the HR would hang up on me without hesitation. Anthony called and said in a condescending tone, "Is your money almost running out? Come back and apologize to me." I clenched my palm tightly, and my nails left several deep crescent marks on my palm. I replied with 3 words, "Impossible." After getting married, Anthony gave me a credit card with no limit on overdrafts. I could use this card to buy jewelry, accessories, and luxury brand handbags, but I couldn't take away any cash. This marriage, this family, it was like a cage made of pure gold, gorgeous, hard, and envied by everyone, but it also made me feel breathless. The next day, I stood in front of a cleaning company. The hourly wage is $30, working 10 hours a day, and the salary is paid daily. The cleaning location is not fixed, depending on the customer's arrangement. The aunt with small curls placed the work uniform in front of me and looked me up and down critically. "Can you intellectuals do physical work?" I took the work uniform and smiled. "Don't look down on me. I'm very good at it. My parents passed away when I was 13 years old. In order to survive and have money to continue my studies, I worked as a waitress in a restaurant in the town, washed cars in an auto repair shop, and sold clothes in a clothing store." After being with Anthony, many people told me, "Sherry, you and Anthony are not from the same circle." I knew that. He had gone on a hunting trip in Africa and seen the aurora in Antarctica. Wherever he wanted to go, in order to welcome his arrival, the place would hang up a sign saying, "Closed to the public." As for me, before the age of 18, I had never left my small hometown county. This marriage of more than 10 years made me mistakenly think that I could walk side by side with him. Just like in every novel, we would finally have a happy ending. But the story ended, and life went on. It was about daily necessities, trivial matters. It was about the casual condescension and the loss of the right to speak brought about by the different social classes. It was like a thin layer of sand between me and Anthony. At first, it was just a slight friction against the skin, making people feel a little uncomfortable. As time passed, this thin layer of sand became the most tormenting thing. It rubbed against the flesh inch by inch, invisible, countless, and impossible to wipe away. I changed into the work uniform of the cleaning company and looked at the woman in the mirror who had no makeup and no jewelry. She used to wear the most exquisite makeup, a high-end Dior dress of the current season, hold a champagne glass, with a fragrant dress and a smiling face. Whether I was Anthony's wife or a cleaner, people have to survive first before they can talk about dignity. In the second week of my employment, I was assigned to an art exhibition hall. There was an exhibition that day, and the art gallery specifically asked our company to provide cleaning services. Working with me was a young boy. He had a dark complexion, was very thin, and looked malnourished, but his eyes were extremely black and bright, like the stars in the sky. I asked, "How old are you?" 16. I smiled. "Impossible. My daughter is 12 years old. Judging by your appearance, you're at most 13 years old." The little boy raised his eyes in a panic. "Please don't report me." I gently shook my head. "I won't. Whose 13-year-old days aren't difficult?" The little boy let out a sigh of relief and gave me a shy smile. For the next 2 hours, he stayed with me all the time. A young boy had endless energy. "This iron bucket is too heavy. Let me carry it for you. I'll hold the chair for you. Don't fall when you stand on it." I handed him a tissue. "Wipe the sweat." "What's your name?" "Nathan." Nathan gave me a shy smile, raised his little face, and said carefully, "Auntie, can't you see with your left eye?" I was taken aback. "How did you find out?" For so many years, even my husband and daughter hadn't noticed. The little boy gestured at the distance between the paintings. "When you look at things, the distance is not accurate." "Auntie, did you lose the sight in your left eye because of an illness?" I shook my head. "No, it was a gunshot wound. To save my ex-husband and daughter." The child opened his eyes wide. "Then your ex-husband and daughter must have been very touched." "Right. 3 days before the wedding, I tried to raise the corners of my mouth, but found that I couldn't lift them up no matter what, and my face only maintained a funny expression. They don't remember this matter." I touched the artificial eye on my left side, and a wave of bitterness welled up in my heart. They were clearly the 2 people who should be closest to me, the scars on my heart and the scars on my body, but they knew nothing about them. "Auntie, don't cry." Nathan stood in front of me at a loss. and his small black hand wiped away my tears. Was I crying? Nathan puffed out his cheeks. They were too careless. It's their fault. From now on, I'll help Auntie carry things. I'll help Auntie measure distances. And I'll be Auntie's eyes. If anyone dares to bully Auntie, I'll fight back for you. The sincere and innocent words made my heart feel warm and comfortable. The corners of my mouth finally turned up. Okay, it's a deal. From now on, you will be my eyes. Let's pinky promise. And don't go back on your word. The little boy showed a shy smile on his dark face, hooked his little finger with mine, and shook it. Okay, pinky promise. And we can't change it for 100 years. The exhibition hall hadn't opened to the public officially yet. Only a very small number of people who held special invitations could enter in advance today. Nathan and I held cloth towels and carefully wiped the dust off the picture frames. Not far away, a soft female voice came. Crystal, this is a work by the famous oil painter Mr. Tobias. If you like it, shall I buy it for you? Dear, when I heard the familiar name, I suddenly froze in place. I saw my daughter, Crystal. Crystal was wearing a princess dress. The layers of tulle skirt were like blooming flowers, and there was a hairpin set with an 8-carat diamond in her hair. She was arm in arm with Tracy. Very intimate. Thank you, Aunt Tracy. We already have 3 works by Mr. Tobias at home. This time, I'd like to take a look at some realistic paintings more. Next to her, there were 3 or 4 children of the same age, who were Crystal's friends, also the daughters and sons of wealthy families. It was as if they had known I would be here. Tracy raised her head, met my eyes, and showed a malicious smile. The next second, she raised her voice and pointed at the oil painting behind me, saying, Crystal, what do you think of that painting? My heart suddenly rose. Subconsciously, I wanted to cover my face with my hands. I never thought it was embarrassing to do physical work, but in front of Crystal and her friends, I wanted to retain a bit of dignity for myself. Don't look at me. Don't look at me. Don't let my daughter see her mother in such an embarrassing state. The gods didn't hear my prayer. It was like a slow-motion scene in a movie. Crystal turned her head inch by inch and looked at me. Tracy covered her mouth and said with an exaggerated and affected expression, Crystal, that cleaner looks so much like your mother. Crystal's eyes calmly swept over my cleaning uniform and the rag in my hand. She didn't stop for even a second. Crystal turned her head away and said without hesitation, That's not my mother. I said, My mother is already dead. A thunderclap seemed to explode in my ears. I felt dizzy and almost couldn't stand steadily. My palm was scratched by the sharp iron sheet of the table frame, and a bloodstain immediately appeared. Tracy smiled. She pinched Crystal's soft face and said with a smile, Then what kind of new mother does little Crystal want? Crystal hugged Tracy, pressed her small face against Tracy's chest, and coquettishly said, Of course, I want a mother like Aunt Tracy. She's smart, beautiful, and will play with me. It was as if a hand had lifted my heart and kneaded it repeatedly. It was also like throwing my heart into a frying pan. The excruciating pain in my heart made me not even feel the pain in my palm. The daughter I carried in my womb for 10 months, endured the pain of my bones spreading during childbirth, and howled in pain in the delivery room for a whole day and night to give birth. The daughter I held in my arms, endured the pain of cracked nipples, and fed with my blood and milk to raise. The daughter I stayed up all night for, held in my arms, and gently hummed a lullaby to coax to sleep. She cursed me to die, hugged another woman, and called her mother intimately. A small dark figure rushed in front of Crystal like a small whirlwind. Nathan knocked Crystal down and shouted loudly, Your mother is clearly here. Can't you see? The scene was in chaos. The blood from my palm flowed all over the floor. Nathan and Crystal fell to the ground. Tracy covered her stomach and slowly fainted. The sirens of the ambulance, the screams of the crowd, and the flustered footsteps mixed together. When I came to my senses again, I was already in the hospital. Everyone was bustling around Tracy. No one dealt with the wound on my hand. It had already coagulated on its own, and my palm and the back of my hand were covered in blood. In the corridor of the hospital, Anthony rushed over in a suit, furious, and immediately launched a scolding. Sherry, what the hell are you doing? Do you want others to know that Crystal has a mother who works as a cleaner? How will she be able to hold her head up in front of her friends in the future? Also, that child suddenly rushed over and scared Tracy. Tracy is pregnant and her body is already weak. She just fainted from being frightened. Later, when she wakes up, you go and apologize to her, and this matter will be over. Me. Go and apologize to Tracy. It was so absurd that I couldn't help laughing out loud. Anthony frowned. What are you laughing at? I raised my palm and put it in front of Anthony. When you feel sorry for your mistress, please open your eyes and take a good look. She's not the only one who's injured. Anthony was silent for a moment. I'll call a doctor for you. No need, I said sarcastically. Mr. Anthony is extremely busy. By the time you remember, I'm afraid I'll have already lost too much blood. Anthony rubbed his forehead in frustration. At least, go and see Crystal. I fell silent. I did want to see Crystal. I wanted to get my safety buckle back. The safety buckle my mother gave me. When I was 13 years old, my mother fell seriously ill. She lay on her side on the bed, her eye sockets sunken, and her thin and withered hand covered mine. Sherry, my body won't hold on for much longer. My mother's thin and sallow hand reached behind her neck and took off a safety buckle tied with a red string. It was emerald green, with a delicate texture. It felt warm to the touch and exuded a gentle and tranquil luster. My mother trembled slightly and tied the red string around my neck. This safety buckle was given to me by your grandmother, praying for a lifetime of safety. I'm giving it to you, hoping that my Sherry, instead of seeking great wealth and honor, can just have a peaceful life. There was a sad look in her eyes. That was the sadness a mother showed when she was on the verge of death and about to part with her daughter. I'm not capable, making my Sherry suffer. Sherry, you'll have to walk the rest of the road on your own from now on. I held her hand tightly, called her name in a hurry, and before I knew it, tears had streamed down my face. My mother went from weighing 130 pounds originally to 80 pounds. And in the end, there was only a small urn left. I held my mother's ashes urn and pressed my face against it, just like when I buried myself in my mother's arms when I was a child. Mom, Mom, Mom. From then on, when I called out these two words, there would never be anyone to respond to me again. This safety buckle became my most precious thing, and I had been wearing it close to my body for 10 years, until Crystal was born. When I was forced to jump off the cliff by Anthony's mother, I was already 4 months pregnant. The impact of the jump, the frightened emotion, and the bone-chilling cold sea water, under the combined effect of these factors, as soon as I was rescued, I managed to keep the baby in the hospital for 3 months, and then Crystal was born prematurely. Looking at the small, fragile, and blue-purple baby in the intensive care unit, I held the safety buckle my mother left me tightly, knelt outside, and prayed over and over again. If there are gods listening, please, please, bless my daughter to be safe. I'm willing to trade my lifespan, my happiness, everything I have for my daughter to survive. The white walls of the hospital have heard more mothers' prayers and tears than temples. 3 months later, Crystal finally got out of danger. I looked at her sleeping face with tears streaming down my face and tied the safety buckle around her neck. Just like my life. From then on, a small part of it was tied to myself, and a large part of it was tied to my daughter. Anthony and I walked into the ward. Tracy was lying on the hospital bed, with a ruddy complexion and no sign of having fainted at all. There was a large pile of snacks in front of Crystal. When she saw me come in, she gave me a provocative look and, right in front of me, took big bites of the potato chips. Because of her premature birth, Crystal had an allergic constitution. In the past, I always watched over her and didn't let her eat these. Until once, in Anthony's office, I saw Tracy secretly stuffing a large bag of snacks to her. Here, Crystal, eat it. Crystal said sweetly. Thank you, Aunt Tracy. You're much better than my mother. I like you the most. Mom has no job and can only stare at me all day long, finding a sense of accomplishment in disciplining me. Aunt Tracy is a strong career woman and won't be like my mother, who can only rely on my dad to earn money. Anthony half leaned against the desk and looked at the two of them indulgently. The three of them looked more like a family of 3. In the ward, Crystal crunched on the potato chips in front of me, and in the blink of an eye, she finished a whole bucket. My gaze swept over her face, and I said calmly, "Give me back the safety buckle." Crystal looked confused. "What? The safety buckle I put on you when you were born? Give it back to me." Tracy, who was sitting next to her, suddenly laughed. "You mean this?" She took off a red string from her neck, on which there was a touch of gentle green. "It was the safety buckle I gave to Crystal." Tracy smiled and said, "When I fainted just now, Crystal was worried that I would get hurt, so she gave me this safety buckle. Crystal said that this is for ensuring safety and that it should bless me and the little brother in my belly to be safe. The safety buckle my mother gave me was given by Crystal to my husband's mistress. There was a loud buzz in my head. The hustle and bustle around me had nothing to do with me at this moment. The blood on my face faded rapidly, and my lips trembled. Give it back to me. I pounced on Tracy like I was crazy. Give it back to me. Tracy screamed. What a lousy thing. Do you still treat it like a treasure? A legitimate wife only gives her only daughter such lousy jade material with this kind of texture. I don't even want to cherish it. She tore off the red string and threw the safety buckle at me. With a snap, the safety buckle fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. I seemed to see my mother's thin hand holding this safety buckle, and a gentle smile appeared on her pale face. This safety buckle will bless our Sherry to be safe for a lifetime in the future. Mom, I'm sorry. The only thing you left me as a keepsake was broken by me. My eyes suddenly went dark, and I was like a puppet without support, falling straight backward. Mom, Sherry, in a daze. I felt myself being hugged by Anthony. He picked me up horizontally and placed me on a stretcher, and I was pushed into the emergency room. The doctor pried open my eyes, and a strong light shone on my left eye that had no vision. This lady is blind in her left eye. This fainting was caused by nerve compression under extreme emotional excitement. In the last moment before completely losing consciousness, I heard Anthony's extremely anxious voice. Why is her left eye blind? My eyes went dark, and I completely fainted. I clearly realized that I was dreaming, because I actually saw Sherry at the age of 22. The waves crashed against the rocks. The sky was pitch black, with only a few stars twinkling. Sherry at the age of 22 stood on the edge of the cliff, wearing a thin dress. The sea breeze blew up the hem of her skirt, like a seagull spreading its wings. She raised her head and smiled gently at me. You're here. I walked up to her side, looked at her young and bright face, and before I knew it, tears streamed down my face. I'm sorry, I let you down. I'm sorry. Sherry at the age of 35 let you down. She didn't become a pillar of the country, nor did she become an extremely amazing senior. She didn't pursue advanced studies in her major, didn't have a job, and became a woman abandoned by her husband and daughter. She couldn't even keep her mother's keepsake. I'm sorry. She became a weak, tired, and unsuccessful adult. Is my life also like that safety buckle? With a snap, it shattered and could never be mended again. No. Sherry at the age of 22 smiled at me, more dazzling than the spring light in April. You've done a great job. She seemed to be talking to me and also to herself. You've walked such a long way on your own. You're amazing and great. Thank you. You've worked hard, she said slowly, seriously, and clearly word by word. Do you remember who saved you that night after you jumped off the cliff? It was you yourself. You were so weak at that time. In the icy sea water, you clung to a wooden board. You drifted with the waves all night long. And finally, the next day, you were saved by the passing fisherman. Sherry, no matter how old you are, you're still the same you. You can always rely on yourself and do things that others can't. Sherry at the age of 22 walked up to me and hugged me. Her long hair fell on my shoulders, and she stroked my back gently. She said, there's no one to pull you out of the abyss. You are that person. So, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of having nothing. The past you will accompany you. The pain you've experienced, the sweat and tears you've shed, the knowledge you've learned, and the roads you've walked will accompany you. You will always have yourself. All the grievances, bitterness, pain, and hardships of these years burst out at once. The tears fell into my mouth, tasting salty. I buried my face in her neck and sobbed uncontrollably. In the silent night sky, the stars blinked their eyes, watching the young girl and the woman embracing each other. Don't be afraid of the wind, frost, snow, and rain. Don't be afraid of the confused road ahead, because I will, again and again, thousands of times, without hesitation, save myself from the hardships of this world. It was like having a very long dream. It was also like finally waking up from a dream. When I woke up, the pillow had already been soaked by my tears. The unique smell of disinfectant in the hospital filled my nostrils. I moved a little, and Anthony, who had been pretending to be asleep, woke up with a start at once. Sherry, you're awake. How do you feel? Is there anywhere you feel uncomfortable? Crystal stood beside my hospital bed, twisting the lace of her skirt with her small hand, and called softly, Mom. I lay back on the pillow again. I was fine originally, but seeing the two of them after waking up, I wasn't fine anymore. Anthony's eyes fell on my left eye, and he hesitated to speak. Sherry, what's going on with your left eye? The doctor said that your left eye was replaced with a prosthesis 9 years ago. 9 years ago was the year I found you. What happened at that time? He looked at me in a panic, as if he wanted an answer, yet also afraid of getting an answer. Sherry, did I forget something important? I lay on the hospital bed, looking up at the liquid in the drip bottle, which flowed into my body bit by bit through the infusion tube. It was like the memories of 9 years ago flowing back into my body little by little. After I faked my death by jumping off the cliff, Anthony didn't give up looking for me. He didn't believe that I was dead, nor did he listen to the arranged marriage in his family. In order to find me, he almost turned the whole capital city upside down, in order to take care of the newly born Crystal and also to avoid Anthony. For 3 years, I rarely left the house and only found some part-time jobs online, but I didn't give up studying. When Crystal was 3 years old, I finally received an offer from MIT. My supervisor appreciated the research direction of my college thesis. The scholarship provided could cover the tuition fees and living expenses, and there was even a slight surplus, which could support Crystal. My heart started beating again. A week later, I boarded a plane to the United States. The plane traced a path in the blue sky, and the white clouds stretched around me. I looked at the houses below that were getting smaller and smaller through the airplane window. Goodbye, the capital city. Goodbye, Anthony. Suddenly, the flashing red light came on in the cabin. The plane circled and descended, and the passengers in the cabin were in a panic. What's going on? Why is it landing suddenly? The tall flight attendant walked up to me, squatted down halfway, and said softly, "Miss Young, this way, please." I sat still. The flight attendant's smile was still bright. "Mr. Anthony said that the plane can't take off again until you get off the plane." With a swish, the gazes of all the people on the plane shot over like searchlights. I clenched my palm and slowly stood up. In the first-class lounge, I saw Anthony again. This man whom I hadn't seen for 3 years. He had always been elegant, calm, and at ease. I had never seen Anthony in such a mess. There were dark circles under his eyes, and there was stubble on his chin, as if he hadn't slept for 3 days. He knelt down on one knee in front of me, hugged me tightly, and buried his face in my neck. I felt the cold wetness on my neck. He choked up and said, "Sherry, you're not dead. That's great. You're not dead. I've never given up looking for you in these 3 years. As long as the search and rescue team under that cliff didn't find your remains, I wouldn't give up. Do you know how I felt when I found out your passport information? I finally found you. You also have a daughter with you, right?" He saw Crystal. Anthony's eyes suddenly turned red. He carefully picked up Crystal, as gentle as if he were holding a fragile doll. "She looks like me, really like me." Anthony's act of intercepting the plane was too high profile, and he was directly located by his enemies. The moment he held Crystal in his arms, with a snap, the glass was shattered by the bullet. "Be careful." I suddenly pushed Anthony and Crystal away and fell to the ground. The stray bullet grazed my left eye, and I groaned and covered my eye. Blood flowed out between my fingers. "Sherry." The gunpowder smoke filled the air, and the gunshots were deafening. The shooting was aimed at Anthony. Several fatal bullets whistled over and hit Anthony's chest. The bodyguards of his family arrived quickly, controlled the situation, and sent Anthony to the nearest hospital by helicopter. On the helicopter, Anthony's face was as pale as paper. The bullet wound was still bleeding continuously, staining half of his shirt red, but his gaze always stayed firmly on me. "Sherry, I love you." Each word seemed to have used up all his strength, and his voice was trembling and weak. Anthony held my hand tightly and tried to squeeze out a smile. "If I survive, give me a chance to make up for the mistakes of these 3 years with the rest of my life." "Okay." Anthony was pushed into the operating room. My left eye was also properly bandaged. However, the eye is a sensitive part after all. The optic nerve was hit, and I could only replace it with a prosthesis. And Anthony was much more seriously injured. There was a through injury in his right chest, broken ribs, and massive bleeding. I saw Anthony lying in the ICU. As he breathed, a layer of mist covered the oxygen mask. At that time, I was young and soft-hearted. This thrilling experience made me realize that I still loved Anthony. I thought silently in my heart, if Anthony could survive, I would agree to him. I wouldn't leave him anymore. A week later, Anthony woke up, but he forgot this memory. The doctor said that because Anthony was too seriously injured, his body couldn't bear such intense emotional fluctuations. In order to protect his brain, he forcibly forgot the memory of being shot. It didn't matter. I thought in my heart, as long as I remembered. I gave up the offer from MIT and got back together with Antony. I walked into the golden cage that Antony had built for me again. At that time, I didn't know. Just like a butterfly flapping its wings. This decision had a profound impact on my future. If I hadn't forgiven Antony and hadn't given up further studies, would the ending now be completely different? I didn't know. I believed in people's hearts. But people's hearts change. The daughter who used to obediently snuggle in my arms and smile sweetly at me now prefers another woman to be her mother. Antony, who had sworn to make up for me with the rest of his life, also cheated on a younger and more beautiful girl. And now, I'm going to get out of this golden cage. I'm going to live for myself. After listening to my narration, Antony stood there in a daze. His breathing became rapid and heavy, and his chest rose and fell violently. All these years, Sherry, why didn't you tell me? I turned my head and said calmly, some things, you will know without being told. Some things, it's useless to tell them. After saying that, I closed my eyes wearily and stopped looking at him. The sunlight climbed up the window lattice grid by grid, but it couldn't reach me and Antony. Antony bent over. His body seemed to be crushed by an invisible heavy pressure, and he buried his face in his hands. After a long time, his shoulders twitched, and he let out a suppressed sob. From that day on, Antony and Crystal seemed like two different people. Antony moved his desk to my hospital room. During the day, he sat on that hard and uncomfortable chair and held meetings with his subordinates in various languages. At night, he would wake up every few hours, tuck in my quilt, and carefully check if I had a fever. He even made health porridge and then carefully brought it to my mouth, asking me how it tasted. It's said that there's no filial son in front of a long-term sickbed. I even suspected that Antony wanted to be my son. After I was hospitalized, no one controlled Crystal's diet restrictions anymore. She ate junk food without any scruples and, as expected, had an allergic reaction. Her snow-white little face swelled up like a pig's head. Crystal couldn't control her hands. Because it was too itchy, she kept scratching her cheeks. Even after recovering, there would be scars on her face. She came to me crying, Mom, I was wrong. I should have listened to you and not eaten these things. I won't listen to Aunt Tracy either. I'll listen to you from now on. In the past, I would immediately hold her in my arms and comfort her tenderly. But now, I just looked at her pig-like face and found it funny. It's so ugly. Cover it up quickly. Don't scare others. I'm myself first before being anyone's wife or mother. Time passed quickly. 3 weeks later, it was my birthday. Antony prepared a cake for me. The light of the candles flickered in the hospital room, filled with the smell of disinfectant. Antony looked at me expectantly. Sherry, make a wish. I put my hands together, made a wish silently in my heart, and then gently blew out the candles. Crystal looked at me eagerly. Mom, is your wish related to me and Dad? She knew that in the past. My birthday wishes were always for her to be safe all her life and for Antony to have a smooth life. There was never anything about myself. It's related. Crystal's eyes lit up with excitement. Antony also held his breath, and his gaze fell on my face. My voice was calm. My wish is that I hope Antony and Crystal, the big one and the small one, can be packed together and get out of my world. The air around seemed to freeze. Crystal stared at me blankly and burst into loud sobs with a wow. Antony twitched the corner of his mouth, trying to show a smile, but it looked uglier than crying. Sherry, don't make such jokes on your birthday. I looked at him calmly. I'm not joking. Antony, the fate between each person has a certain limit. You and I were never on the same path. That shooting forcibly tied the red thread between us for another 9 years. But this thread is too light and thin to withstand the wear and tear of these years. Antony, the fate between you and me has come to an end. Save some dignity as an adult and part on good terms. Time suddenly became quiet. Antony sat there in silence, like a silent statue. His hands clenched into fists. His knuckles turned white, and his veins bulged. He was silent for a long time and finally opened his mouth, but only uttered a few words. You won't forgive me anymore, will you? I nodded calmly, as if discussing the weather today. I won't forgive you anymore, and I don't love you anymore either. Antony turned his face away. The lines on his face were tense, and in the depths of his eyes, it was like a silent lake. I vaguely saw a trace of tears flash in Antony's eyes. Crystal finally realized that I didn't want her anymore. She grabbed my arm in a panic. her nails digging deeply into my skin, and cried loudly. I don't want to leave. I want Mom. She hurt me again. My hand covered her small hand. Then, one finger at a time, I pried her hand off my arm. Don't call me Mom anymore. I smiled faintly. I have a new child. If you call me like this, he will be jealous. Crystal was stunned. Who? Nathan walked up to me and leaned against me affectionately. The safety buckle around his neck had been repaired and was wrapped with gold-inlaid jade. Nathan picked up the pieces of the safety buckle one by one from the ground and pieced them together bit by bit. He wore it around his neck preciously. The things that Crystal didn't cherish, someone cherished. The mother that Crystal didn't love, someone would love. Crystal's mouth opened wide, and she let out a heart-rending cry. She rushed over suddenly and beat Nathan fiercely, shouting non-stop. It's all because of you that Mom doesn't want me. It's all because of you. Her fists rained down on Nathan. I raised my arm and, without hesitation, protected Nathan behind me. I looked at her indifferently. Crystal, stop acting up. The way you're throwing a tantrum is really ugly. If you hit my son again, I'll call the police and have you arrested. On that day, Anthony carried Crystal, who had cried until she fainted, and left. Before leaving, Anthony looked at my face for a long time. After a long time, he finally opened his mouth, his voice extremely hoarse. I'm sorry, Sherry. I'm sorry for the hurt I caused you. And all of this had nothing to do with me anymore. A month later, I recovered from my injury. The first thing I did after being discharged from the hospital was to go through the adoption procedures for Nathan. The child followed me and changed his name to Claire. After the red ink pad was stamped, the child held the adoption certificate and giggled for a long time. I couldn't stand it anymore and flicked his head. If you keep laughing, your mouth will be crooked. Claire hugged me with a smile, buried his face in my arms, and kept calling me, Mom, Mom, Mom. I smiled and said, yes. From then on, I had one more person who loved me. I turned on the computer, deleted and revised for a month, and sent an email again to the MIT professor who had once given me an offer. I waited restlessly for half a month, and I no longer held out hope. The mailbox dinged, and a new email arrived. An email from MIT. The old professor said that he still remembered me and was willing to offer me another opportunity to study. I covered my face and let out a silent scream. My heart was pounding and beating rapidly in my chest. I did it. Sherry at the age of 35 pulled herself out of the abyss once again. The future is like a shining road, slowly unfolding in front of me. After 9 years, I took Claire and boarded a plane to the United States again. Before boarding the plane, I wrote a complete report letter with all the evil deeds Anthony's family had done over the years, along with the evidence, and sent it out. It can be regarded as putting an end to these years. In the unique humming sound of the aircraft cabin, I closed my eyes and fell asleep unconsciously. I had another dream. I dreamed of myself at the age of 18, holding the admission notice from Peking University and walking into the flashy and dazzling capital city. She had a ponytail, no makeup on her face, and was wearing old clothes that had been washed until they turned white. But she was so full of spirit. Looking at my younger self, I couldn't help but say with heartache, you will have a really tough time in the next few years. You will jump into the sea, get shot, give birth to a child, and get divorced. You will taste all the pain of relationships in life. You will have nothing and be completely exhausted. The girl opened her eyes wide, and her ponytail swayed. Ah, will it be very hard? Just as I was about to say something, the girl took a step forward and smiled. But you got through it and are doing well now, aren't you? If you can get through it, so can I. I want to experience the ups and downs of life on my own. Don't spoil it for me in advance. I at the age of 18 was like a tenacious weed. Even on the barren cliffs, I could push aside the stones, shake my leaves, and welcome the sunlight, rain, and dew. Perhaps I once took a wrong path and was once confused and in distress. But I will eventually reach out to myself and pull myself out of the darkness. Fortunately, I at the age of 35 am also like this. I lost myself and then found myself again. So, I also smiled with relief. We held hands and walked towards the long, shining road in the dream. I will become my own courage and armor. From then on, the sun is shining just right, and the road ahead is smooth. Extra chapter. Anthony's family has had a tough time in recent years. The evil deeds of Anthony's family were reported, and they were thoroughly investigated. Suffering a great loss, Anthony's family's industries were inspected one by one. Their accounts were frozen, their assets were sealed up, and the stock price plummeted like a cliff until it hit the daily limit. The luxurious sports cars were impounded, the artworks were confiscated, and the wine cellar full of famous wines was also sealed with a seal. The once bustling banquet hall is now deserted. The once arrogant Xie family has fallen from the clouds to the bottom, and their status has plummeted. Tracy gave birth to a boy. From then on, Crystal found that her always loving grandmother seemed to have changed into a different person. Her pocket money was stopped, and even her right of inheritance was crossed out from the will. In order to protect the only male heir, the last bit of Antony's family's assets was given to her younger brother. The old lady of Antony's family had a wrinkled face and still wore red lipstick. Her slanting eyes made her look even more mean. Antony's family will belong to your younger brother in the future. You're just a girl. Do you still want to compete with your brother? Crystal wanted to go to her beloved Aunt Tracy to cry and complain. But she found that Tracy, who used to be gentle and kind to her, glanced at her contemptuously and sneered. Your mother is already gone. Don't expect me to spoil you like she did. You'd better be obedient, or you'll suffer. Crystal's face turned red. You shameless woman. If it weren't for you seducing my dad in the first place, why would my mom have left? Tracy's face instantly darkened. She raised her hand and slapped Crystal hard with a slap. She said viciously, "Do you think you're still that pampered young lady? I'm telling you, your parents don't want you, and your grandmother doesn't want you either. Now, I'm the mistress of this house." Crystal covered her swollen and red face and cried so hard that she was out of breath. She then realized that the smooth life she had had in the previous years was because Sherry had been shielding her from the wind and rain. It was she herself who had pushed her mother away with her own hands. Crystal finally realized belatedly, no one would love her like her mother did anymore. From then on, the quarrels between Crystal and Tracy intensified, and they even resorted to physical fights. During one of the quarrels, Tracy pushed Crystal hard. Crystal was caught off guard, lost her balance, stumbled a few steps backward, and finally fell into the icy river. The river water instantly submerged her head. 3 days later, when Crystal was found, her body had swollen from being soaked in the water. The old lady of Antony's family held her beloved grandson and said indifferently to Tracy, "An eye for an eye. Anyway, you're not married to Antony. Leave Antony's family's grandson behind. As for the rest, let the law decide the sentence." Tracy laughed like a madwoman, and the muscles on her face were twisted and deformed. Antony's family's grandson. What dream are you having? This is not your grandson at all. That night, I didn't sleep with Antony at all. This child was born to me and another man. You old woman who values sons over daughters and is blind. Now your own granddaughter is dead, and you treat this fake grandson like the apple of your eye. How do you feel about it? The old lady of Antony's family was so angry that her thin fingers pointed at Tracy and stammered, You. For a long time, she couldn't catch her breath and fainted all of a sudden. She was already old, and after several stimuli, her whole body collapsed instantly, and she became hemiplegic. Half of her body lost its sensation, and she could only lie on the bed feebly, unable to take care of her own toileting. A few months passed, and her body became even weaker. One silent night, the old lady of Antony's family suddenly felt the churning in her stomach. Before she could call for help, the vomit gushed out of her mouth like a flood breaking through a dam, blocking her mouth and nose, making her unable to breathe, and she died of suffocation. The white cloth used to pay tribute to Crystal had just been removed and was then arranged on the old lady of Antony's family's mourning hall, losing 2 of his closest blood relatives one after another. Antony aged a lot all of a sudden. Fine lines climbed up the corners of his eyes, and white strands were mixed in his hair. He looked old and tired. Antony stood in front of the old lady of Antony's family's mourning hall and thought silently. How ironic. Crystal liked Tracy, but in the end, she was killed by Tracy. His mother wanted a grandson, but it turned out that the grandson was not of Antony's family's blood. Tracy schemed and calculated everything, but in the end, she was sentenced to death for intentional homicide. And he himself, on one hand, liked Sherry, but on the other hand, he couldn't bear to part with the wealth and glory of Antony's family. So, Antony's family collapsed, and everything vanished like clouds and smoke until there was nothing left. Antony suddenly covered his face and laughed. As he laughed, tears welled up between his fingers. All of this was the retribution they deserved for trampling on Sherry's sincere heart in the first place. Extra Chapter 2. In contrast to the decline of Antony's family, Sherry has had a great time in recent years. She spent 4 years obtaining a Ph.D. degree from MIT. Sherry didn't forget her wish at the age of 18 to become a pillar of the country. She returned to China after completing her studies, founded the technology company Zhouxing, obtained hundreds of millions of dollars in financing, and became a new upstart in the technology industry. At an academic conference, Sherry met a big shot in the academic world, who fell in love with her at first sight. He was young, handsome, and loved her very much. The big shot pursued her for a long time, and only then did Sherry relent and enter into her second marriage with a beaming smile. They didn't have any more children and gave all their love to Claire. The last time Antony saw Sherry was at an academic conference. As a special guest, she made the final appearance and shared her latest algorithm model at the conference. In the academic conference hall, the lights were bright and focused on the lady on the podium. She was dressed in a simple and decent formal suit, with a tall and straight posture, a beautiful voice, and elegant enunciation. The moment she finished her speech, thunderous applause rang out. The applause lasted for a long time, as if it was going to break through the roof and reach the sky. Sherry slightly bowed her body and gracefully bowed to the audience to express her gratitude. At this moment, she was the focus of the entire venue, and everyone's eyes couldn't move away from her. Antony was also one of them. She spoke as a student representative and stood firmly in front of the microphone. She was radiant, full of spirit, confident, and generous, and the feeling of his heart being moved was just like in the past. Antony wanted to take a step forward, walk up to Sherry, and ask her, "How are you?" Two people were one step faster than him. The academic big shot's eyes were full of admiration and love. He opened his broad chest, hugged Sherry tightly in his arms, and gently kissed her on the cheek. "Honey, you're amazing. I'm so proud of you." Claire also threw himself into his mother's arms, his eyes shining brightly. "Mom, you're so amazing. You were shining up there." Sherry showed a soft smile and hugged her husband and son back. The sunlight shone gently through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden outline on her fair side face. Her delicate skin seemed to emit a soft light under the illumination of the sunlight. After all these years, she didn't look old at all. Instead, nourished by love, she became even more beautiful and charming. Antony, with a head full of white hair, smiled self-deprecatingly, took a step back, and returned to the shadow under the curtain. Time passed by in a hurry. She still stood in the sunlight, and he had fallen into the endless darkness. The end.